Hey, welcome back to Antioch Tulsa's Relational Values. We are getting into wholehearted authenticity, and it is good to have you. I got Rachel Crawley in studio with me.
Woo! Hello.
Welcome in, Rachel.
Thank you.
Just had a long convo with your significant other.
Yeah, he is significant.
Yeah, he is significant, passionate dude.
He is.
Um, but Rachel, she jumped in, come back to Tulsa in June this year or July.
July.
She had been a part of another Antioch, a couple hours away, and her husband thought it was a good idea to follow Jesus into building this whole Antioch Tulsa. And so, Rachel, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
I appreciate you not just choosing to trust us, but kind of come back to home and
Yeah.
really choose Jesus. And as we're getting into wholehearted authenticity today, I've been greatly encouraged and challenged by your authenticity with God.
Well,
And so,
thank you.
yeah, excited to get into it. All right, as with all of our values, Jesus is the centerpiece. This is how he has, what we see in Scripture, how he's relating. And so the way we have narrowed in wholehearted authenticity is this right here. We bring our hearts and perspectives into our relationships. And so, Rachel, I'd love to hear from you kind of just in the last 6, 9 months as we've been using this language. How have you been challenged and how has this value been in your life?
Yeah. Um. Well, I think it's been one of the more significant ones for me, and I feel like before we even covered it in our the sessions that we've had over the various values, it was one that I felt like the Lord was inviting me to jump into pretty early on. I think because I'm kind of naturally fairly guarded and untrusting. So yeah, so I think there has been a really significant change in my trust levels moving up, like regardless of people having proven their trust to me or not. I think the biggest where it had to start for me was in learning to trust the Father. So beginning with being wholeheartedly authentic with God, in showing my own weaknesses and my own questions and doubts and fears, and also the things I'm really excited about, or just being myself with God. And as he's responded to me, which we say wholeheartedly authentic, I think it can be a really scary thing to do, to actually step out, because you have to trust. And if for me that wasn't an innate, it's just not been an innate thing for me to immediately trust even God or Jonathan, my husband. So anyway, as I've basically just in spending time with God and revealing to him, he already knows what's inside, but actually making the choice of I want to show what's in me to you intentionally. And then every time I've been met by acceptance that is profound. And so then to be authentic with people, I think there's a place of security that you have to have before being authentic with people. Security regardless of whether they accept or reject you.
Totally.
So by being accepted by the Father first, that gives so much security in who I am, and letting him speak to me about who he says that I am, and it's always a good thing.
Yeah.
So
We had hit this, Matt and I, when we were talking about hopeful expectation, of the starting point of these relational values is essentially, what are you expecting from God? And what you're describing, I think the way you said it is how I treat people, or even how I treat God, irregardless of if they've proven themselves to me. Am I going to choose to bring all of myself, or am I going to guard myself and wait and see if that's really trustworthy?
yeah.
And so I hear you saying over the last 6 months, it's really been rooted in, hey, I'm going to choose to bring my heart to God. And that has really kind of unlocked all your relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it does come back to hopeful expectation so much as well, in that hopeful expectation is the expectation that there's a good God, with you. And so to expect like, okay, when I bring my whole self to God, he's good and
Every time.
is not going to meet me with like anger or, that's just not part, the things that aren't part of his character. I have to trust that he actually will meet me in his character.
Yeah. Even when your behavior might have caused the miss,
Mm-hmm.
he's still good.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even when I didn't practice maybe honor with my significant other,
Mm-hmm.
I can still go back to God, and he actually helps me sort out what caused that.
Right.
That's awesome. How, as you have been in this, as we've been building this in our culture, how have you seen this in the life of Jesus?
Yeah, there's two like really significant, I guess, story. I don't know what I really want to call them stories, but moments in Jesus' life. The first one is when Lazarus has died, and the verse is just simply Jesus wept. And I think part of wholehearted authenticity for me is embracing and like expressing emotion, even if I know that it doesn't line up with like what my head knows is true. I still have like whatever emotion XYZ thing it is. So with Jesus, like knowing that it's all, like all will come right in the end. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't know that Lazarus would be resurrected. But regardless, like knowing what he did about, humanity, he's still like paused and like embraced the emotion of grief
Mm.
and embraced the emotion of like what the people around him, his friends, were experiencing too. Um, and so that's been really significant with basically when emotions don't line up with what is true, it is still like allowed to like express and feel those emotions. And then a second scenario or scene in Jesus's life is in the garden before he's crucified. Um, he has like these interactions with his disciples, and as he's praying, there's just such a like he expresses like grief. He expresses like anxiety and dread. And I think that feels significant because like obedience to God doesn't mean like this like unfeeling like somber
Yes.
duty, like you can talk to your father about like I feel like I can't do this, or like here's what's happening inside of me. I want you to be part of this. I want to be known by you, God. And he wants to know you, and he's not just asking for this like, I don't know, he's not just like banging a hammer and expecting things from us. He actually wants to be in it with us. So that's what I see in how Jesus interacted with God there.
Yeah, that is such a. I mean, that a whole another conversation is why emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we're creating the image of God, well, I think that means God is an emotional being.
Yeah.
And then when you take that through our own humanistic perspective, it can get weird. But as you look at it in the life of Jesus, well, he was the exact representation of the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And so putting himself not like on display, like he's modeling it, but just being himself. Like, I even imagine Mary Magdalene and the story with Lazarus. Was it Mary Magdalene whose brother's Lazarus? I don't, the Mary whose
The
brother,
Mary, I don't
the
know.
Mary whose
I should
brother is
know.
Lazarus. And she goes, I feel like in that text she references that like he is God.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, at some point the disciples are catching that he's the Christ,
Mm-hmm.
like he's the Messiah, and then they still witness the emotional aspect of like Jesus's authenticity.
Mm.
And I'm like, what is the benefit of that?
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, it's one thing, like generally emotions help me trust people more. But I wonder if that's like, in some ways, can you trust someone that doesn't show themselves in an emotional sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of messes with me a little bit.
Yeah.
What are a few maybe relationships that, as you have brought your authentic self to God, like how has that played out in some of your relationships over the last 6 months?
Yeah. I think the first place I started seeing it just like manifest was with Jonathan, and really with it. I don't know if this is like, well, anyway, with like expressing that I love him, or like expressing that like I am really excited about this thing that you just did, or like that I really like whatever thing about you, because I don't know, I have not been able to like correctly or analyze my brain on this, but like why is it that I was so guarded against like, I think it just comes as a whole. When you're trying to like hide part of yourself, you inevitably end up hiding a lot more of yourself than you're trying to. So in trying to hide my own like flaws, or like, just things that I don't like about myself, I'm also like putting my whole self behind a wall. And so that includes the things, that I want to like be able to express, that I really like this thing about you, but I don't know, it just comes as a package deal, I think. So, um, he's he's mentioned how it's been blessing him as well to like that I actually like say with words the things that I like about
Mm.
him, and I'm more excited to do that too, where it doesn't feel like um I think maybe it all kind of comes also to the like idea of duty has to be, or like, doing what you should do has to be unfeeling and not happy. And so if I know that I like want to and should love my husband well, then I feel like I have to do it very somberly instead of like, no, I really enjoy this life with you. So that's one example. Um
Well, I want to zero in on that.
yeah.
I think there's that's so good. But you're referencing when I am internally holding part of myself back, I then am also limiting what I can offer.
Mhm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, totally.
And so it starts in our relationship with God. When I limit myself, then my capacity to be authentic, but to really love and be in connection with someone I want to be,
Mhm.
my husband, a good friend, whoever, it's almost limited
Mhm.
because there's an aspect of yourself you're holding back.
Mhm.
And it's almost impossible to offer that in relationship,
Yeah.
right? Is that
Yeah,
is that kind of
totally.
what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, it just goes hand in hand. And as much as like you can try to like only show the positive parts of you, but the reality is you're a whole person and everything's
Yeah.
connected to everything else.
It makes sense looking at the life of Jesus why he was always pulling off to pray,
Mm.
at least according to Luke's gospel, and the idea of what he was doing all night.
Mm.
Like I've tried to pray all night and it can be pretty hard.
Mhm.
It doesn't sound like I'm that spiritual. 20 minutes in and you're falling asleep.
Mhm.
But I'm guessing there was an element where Jesus was fully offering himself again to the Father,
Mm.
like being authentic, coming off some of these probably highly emotional encounters
Yeah.
where he was needing it in order to be in relationship with anyone
Mhm.
around him.
Mhm.
But no, I think that's so good. Like being authentic and fully offering yourself to God first is actually what enables us to offer ourselves in a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, cool. I interrupted you. Was it you were gonna share another one?
Well, I think with Jonathan, that's been he's my closest human relationship probably. I think with my family too, though. I don't I that one is harder for me to come up with like a specific here's a moment that I was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
wholeheartedly authentic, but I think in just some hard things that have come up in our family recently, there's like to go first in being authentic with people. And maybe I wasn't
Ooh.
going first. This was maybe my perception, but like it truly unlocks people to like to share what's in them too. And so it's not even like setting an example, it's really just creating a safe place. It's like if I don't know, I think there is really something significant about I'm going to like open myself up to you and like take a risk with you, and then like that causes people to feel safe. And so I've seen, I don't know, just like places of my some of my family members' hearts that seem like they've been um opened up or unlocked, or maybe I've been like privileged to see something that other people haven't. And I don't think it's really because I'm special at all. Like, I don't know. I've been like, why? But I think part of it really is just like when you're available for people, then they feel safer around you. So,
No, I think a huge deal. Um, as we talk about these values, it's easy to look at them like in our own strength. Oh, I am going to go and be authentic.
Mm.
And then I'm going to prove it by this one encounter.
Mm.
And what I hear you describing specifically with your extended family is, as you've been being authentic with God, bringing yourself, it's created a mode of relationship
Mm.
where you are just consistently
Mm-hmm.
choosing to be authentic, by proxy creating this culture where people can respond and like. And in a sense, you are hosting God
Mm.
when you do that,
Mm-hmm.
because he's the one that is indwelling inside of us. He's the one bringing conviction. He's the one empowering everything on our lives. And this idea of hosting him, I think a significant piece that you're describing is this internal posture of authenticity, where you're not afraid of yourself,
Mm.
or like I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or I'm doing it wrong, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is. Like the only solution is God.
Mm.
Like there's nothing you can do to fix yourself for your family to understand you.
Right.
Like that'll never happen.
Right.
We're all pretty weird.
Yeah.
Some of us more than others, but
Yeah. Right.
anyways, wholehearted authenticity. Um, well, as you're describing this, and if there's someone listening that's like, oh, I want to practice wholehearted authenticity, what would you say is a good starting point they could begin implementing this week?
Yeah. Well, I'll just share kind of what my journey has been. And it's going to be different for different people. I think just the nature of being authentic is that it's whatever is,
Absolutely.
like what is specific to you. But for me, journaling has been helpful in my life just because I think a lot better when I'm writing something down. Like, I don't know, I think along one train of thought more easily. But I think there's been so much maybe perfectionism or expectation on myself around that, like, that's just been built up over time. So I kind of just like let myself go free on journaling with the Lord of like, here's exactly what's in my brain right now. It might actually not go in a straight line. We might jump around a ton. My handwriting probably won't look very good because I'm writing really fast, or like, I don't know, the words aren't fully put together before I say them. So I think that's where it started with me, of like being authentic with the Father first. And it's been really, I feel like I have felt so connected in like the just pure mess of my like journaling, and without any expectations on it. So I think an invitation would be, maybe journaling is how you relate to God, or maybe like my husband likes to go be in nature, and that's how he really hears God the best. So whatever it is, like, take off the preconceived notions of how something should be about how you relate to God, and really just like, here's what's in me organically, however it comes out. And then just like, I think that's part one, but an equally important part is like waiting and like letting him respond to you, and like experiencing his response of like acceptance of you. And also like, I mean, yeah, he'll speak in however, like, in the language that you hear, um, and his response is always love. So actually waiting for him to respond, and not just like moving on. Like, okay, I
Mm.
was really open and that was uncomfortable, and now I'm moving on. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So what I hear you saying is, as we're wanting to put this into practice, start with your relationship with God.
mm,
And for you, it's been journaling, but it could be, speaking, singing, whatever, however you pour your heart out
mm-hmm,
or relate your heart. And I hear you saying, essentially set apart some time and do what you can to get everything out that is inside of you.
mm-hmm,
Anything that's bothering you, any concerns, anything that's exciting. But don't move on and like wait for him.
mm,
Like don't just move on.
yeah,
Like don't do it for 20 minutes and then be done.
right, yeah,
So maybe block out an hour this week and try and intentionally sit, pour your heart out, or run or walk or however
right,
you do it.
right,
Um, but essentially wait on him.
mm-hmm,
And the nature of God is love. He's perfectly faithful. He never abandons us. And
mm,
so let him be God.
yeah, absolutely,
And ideally, this value will begin coming out then in relationship.
yeah.
Is that true?
Yes, I think it flows so easily from that point.
Yeah. Even to go out and try and force yourself to be authentic.
It's not authentic.
No, it's the opposite.
Right.
It's like you're like grit your teeth and bear it. And even with people we want to be, it's like somehow we don't have the ability to
Right.
even like know ourselves.
Yes.
Like it makes sense that the creator is the one that can actually help us understand ourselves, unlock us,
Yeah.
and make us relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really challenged by how Jesus was always getting off and praying.
Mm.
Because I look at that like such through this religious duty, like I'm going to go pray. Meh.
Yeah.
But I think what he was doing was communing with the Father. Like, I don't know, I think that's what I want. Awesome. Well, Rachel, thanks for being authentic.
My pleasure.
Thanks
Truly, it's been great.
for bringing yourself. It's been a delight to, be 6 months into this adventure we call church.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been something. Well, for everyone joining us, thank you so much for being here. Enjoy Wholehearted Authenticity, and we'll see you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.